by a lonely prison wall, I heard a young girl calling, Michael, they have taken you away, for you stole Trevelyan's corn, so the young might see the morn. Now a prison ship lies waiting in the bay.
Yeah, I'm really glad, Helena, that we come over just to show you where our parents all originated from and everything else, and the actual houses where the Hunts were born and brought up. The remains are still standing today, as you know. And then where my mother's huge family was reared in Corrigula, and the house is still standing there today. Even though it's dilapidated, you really do know for future generations, your present generations and future generations, where you all came from.
Low lie the fields of Athenry, where once we watched the small free birds fly.
My grandfather was born in this house probably around 1830, as were all the Hunts originated from here in the late 17th and early 18th century. My grandfather came to Castlemore maybe around 1860, around about that time, and he married Catherine Doohan, who was born in Castlemore. He set about 1904 and built our present home in Castlemore. There were, I understand, 12 children in my father's family.
Our love was on the wing, we had dreams and songs to sing. It's so lonely.
We most of them immigrated to America in the early 1940s up to 1926-27, and there they remained for the rest of their life.
Around the fields of Athenry, by a lonely prison wall, I heard a young man calling.
The last time I visited this house, to the best of my recollection, was about 1968 or 1969, when the last person to reside in this house, as far as I know, was Mike Hunt, a brother of John Joe Hunt, and a second cousin of my father, John Hunt, from Castlemore. When Mike passed on in the early 1970s, the house became derelict, and that's the way it is today.
Nothing matters, Mary, when you're free. Against the famine and the crowd, I rebel, they cut me down. Now you must raise our child with dignity.
This was the home of Patrick Clussick, my grandfather, who resided here between 1840 and 1928. My mother, Baby Clussick, was born in this house on the 14th of October 1899. My mother went to America about 1922, returned and married my father, John Hunt, in Castlemore in October 1928. This was the residence of the Clussick family, and 12 children was born in this house.
Low lie the fields
To Pat Clussick,
of Athenry, where once we watched.
and Catherine O'Donnell.
The small free birds fly.
My mother,
Our love was on the wing. We had dreams and songs.
married my father, as I said, in October 1928.
Sing. It's so lonely round the fields of Athenry.
That is a story of the Clussick house in Corrigula in the parish of Carrickcastle in August the 3rd, 2011 by her son Patrick Joseph Hunt. Bye!
By a lonely harbour wall, she watched the last star falling. As the prison ship sailed out against the sky, for she lived in hope and pray for her love in Botany Bay. It's so lonely round the fields of Athenry. Low lie the fields of Athenry, where once we watched the small free birds fly. Our love was on the wing. We had dreams and songs to sing. It's so lonely round the fields of Athenry.
I was born in Castlemore on the 17th of September 1934. There was 3 sisters and my brother John, 5 children in the family altogether, plus my father and mother. My father was a farmer and a good one too. We had about 10 milking cows, say 20 head of dry stock, dry cattle. We had sows, which my father got from the Ministry of Agriculture. They were pedigree sows, and your valuation, your land valuation had to be so much before you qualified to get these special sows. When my father sold the pigs when they were 8 weeks old, there was great demand for them because they were bred of pedigree stock, and which at that time he got £10 a pair for the pigs, which was equivalent to about £250 in today's money. That's 2011. It was a lovely village to live in. There were great neighbours. There was 10 houses in the village, and there was no water laid on in them days. We got the water from our well, which was in our field, and it supplied the village. Lovely, clear spring water. And it wasn't until about 1972 that the council laid on the water on tap, which was a sad time, but that's how progress continues. We had lovely neighbours. There was Regan's, Luke Feeney's, Johnny Casty, Robin Feeney's, Martin Woods, Frank Towey, Tom Giva, Jim Regan, Mike Barney, Martin Roddy. Lovely village, great people. One helped the other, and if one was behind with their farming, everybody mucked in and helped them. We sowed a lot of crops because it was during the war to support the British government to feed the people in Britain. Our Ministry of Agriculture defined how much crops you sowed. So many acres of wheat, so many acres of potatoes, so many acres of oats, and then there would an inspector come round from the Ministry of Agriculture to make sure you had sowed the crops that you were required to sow. It was a great time. I know everything was done by hand. All the haymaking was done by hand. We were lucky enough to have a couple of horses of our own mowing machines, our own ploughs, our own harrows, good carts for carting turf. And that was another thing. My father always cut about 70 cribs of turf. We'd use about 30 in the house for boiling and heating, and the rest was sold. A crib of turf that time was a huge quantity of turf, maybe 70 or 80 bagfuls as it is today. You get about £1 a crib for it at that time. Today, the same crib would cost 150, 200 quid. This was a great time, and everybody looked forward to the visit of the monster thresher machine that would come round to everybody's haggard in the back end of the year to thresh the corn. What happened then was all the men in the village would gather together. There was 2 men required, one on top of the thresher cutting the bands, one throwing it on from the stack onto the thresher. A man then would look after the bags when they were full of corn and take them up to the granary. Another man would get the loose straw from the back of the thresher and make it into stacks. There was no bales in them days. It was all done by hand. Altogether, there could be 8 or 9 men working at the thresher. In my time, when oil and fuel was rationed during the war, you'd have a massive horse, preferably a big Irish draft mare, to pull the thresher machine. And then the engine to drive the thresher machine was bolted onto a pony cart or a donkey cart, and a good quality pony would pull that. Then they would come into your haggard and they would set up the machine, and it was great for the children because your job then was to kill the rats. You're selling your dogs and your cats, and we used to have great fun after the rats because they come out of the stacks in hundreds, and I mean hundreds. And then we had a great time. For the men, there was always a bottle of porter, plenty of fags, and when all this was finished, they'd have as Mike Regan says, a jollification. It was certainly a great time. All this occurred between, 1920 and 1950. I left Ireland in 1952, and I was away for years and years in England. Goodbye. Larry, you know the Mordens and Bohawee, Tommy Morden and Larry.
Yes.
Larry lives near me in Newcastle.
Oh, yes.
And he got a tough time going to school. And he said to me one day, he said, what did you think of the Christian Brothers? I said, I said, they were all right, but I said, they beat you to death with the cane.
Yeah.
He said, I always say a prayer that the bastards on the frying pans in hell, he said, the beatings them bastards give me. And, you know, that time if you couldn't pick a thing up, Frank, they would hit you.
Oh, yes, that's true, because they hit you.
It was only for some kids could pick things up, but there was like us working in the country, sure, we were kept at home on a fine day to work on the land.
Oh, so true, yes, oh Christ.
And then you go back to school, you didn't know where you were.
Oh, you didn't know where you were.
And then he'd ask you something and you didn't answer, and you get a clout across the top of the head.
Oh, yes.
To talk about kids today. Kids today lives in luxury compared to what we did.
Ah, but you couldn't learn in them days, you know. Yes, I couldn't read or write when I left school.
I was the
I know,
same.
little lumps on my head at the biggest memory.
I know. This was the wheelbarrow we used in the bog when my father was cutting the turf by hand. And depending on what age you were and how strong you were, sometimes you could wheel 20 sads of turf, and some of the strong lads who was maturing into men could wheel as many as 50, sometimes a distance of 50 yards, and you tipped them out in heaps. And when the turf had its skin on it and you could handle it, when you come home from school you were sent to the bog to spread the turf out in single rows so as it would dry quicker. Then when it got more dry, you had to stand the turf on end. It was called footing, and the wind didn't blow through the turf and dry it. Then when it was 3 parts dry, you could put it into clamps, and then it would season and it was ready for taking home. That's the story it goes.
How much did you used to pay?
I used to cut a bank of turf. It took me a week, a good week of hard, from 9 o'clock in the morning till 6 at night, maybe 5 or 6 days, and for that I got £2.
How much did you sell it for?
A good horse crib of turf at that time was sold from 15 shillings, which was 75 pence. And if you had an exceptionally good load, big load, you might get £1 for it. But for that £1, when you tipped it out of the cart, you had to throw it into the shed or garage for the person who bought it. Times was hard with £1, and then times it'd buy you a lot more than would buy you today.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the bank for cutting turf. This is a bank for cutting turf. Sometimes you could cut the turf downwards, but if the turf was very brittle, you cut it against the grain and you cut it inwards. That's what the people are doing there. That's called down cutting, that's called breast cutting. This was a mode of transport for taking the turf off the bog where a donkey and cart couldn't work. These are called hordocks. It's Gaelic for cleave. So you took your donkey, filled the cleaves, and took it out to the main road or the best road where you could get a cart to load the turf onto. It was hard work for the donkey because sometimes the turf wasn't dry and it was quite heavy. Many a time I used these with Tommy Feeney, who had a pair of creeds for his donkey as well. That was about 1944 and 1945. Today they have pumped up, blown up tyres, put on their great big tractors, and the donkey and the paw dogs are gone in history. That is the story of the donkey and his paw dogs. This Helena is about 100 yards off the Mayo-Roscommon border, divides the 2 counties. You came along here, and this little road here was the road that led into the bog where the people cut turf. My father cut turf in here, and it was called Cluniron turf, black turf, and it was as good as coal and better. Now, there was loads and loads of people cut turf. Martin Frayne, Mike Lafferty, Tom Frayne, Stephen Dignan, Martin Payton, Cork Towie. A day in the bog up here was like a day at the seaside. Everybody had big cakes and onions and bacon and bread and everything else. You lit a fire and sat round at dinner time. So it was just a picnic every day. The work was hard, but it was very, very good. Now then, I carted turf from here with a big black mare. We had a big Irish draft mare called Kitty. And her and I worked here 2 or 3 years before I went to England in 1952. She was a fine animal and a quiet animal. And any load of turf I ever put on her, she brought out here. And the road was nothing like it is today. It was all ruts and everything else, and it was hard going. But Kitty and me could manage 4 or 5 loads of turf from Clonairon to Cashmore every day, which was an exceptional good day's work.
How far is it from here to...
I'd say from here to our house in Cashmore would be 2 mile, 2.5 mile. And then make that trip starting about 9 o'clock in the morning till about 7 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you one thing, you were hungry when you finished your day's work, but I enjoyed it. And then the other thing was, there was girls always on the bog when you were about 15 or 16, and you were looking for a girlfriend. They'd be on the bog working beside you and doing their turf. And like I said before, it was a total holiday. Even though it was hard, we enjoyed it. There you are. How many thousand eggs out in there, Rita? Every year in the month of April, before the work began on the land, my father always killed a pig when it was 16 stone weight. He used to, well, I won't describe how he killed the pig, it was rather grotesque, but we always had a great supply of bacon and black pudding and brawn. And was built by my father. Between 1948, he started building this wall by hand. All that concrete you see on top of that wall, I mixed that with a shovel and put it up on top of that wall with a bucket. It took 3.5 years to build this wall because during the summer my father was busy on the farm, and during the winter he continued building this wall. And at the time I think it cost about £1,000 because it's about 850 yards long, and the amount of stones that's in it, it could be up, it was a 2,000 ton of stone, and it was all done by hand. Everything. My father built them gate piers as well, 2 sets of gate piers, and I think his wages that time was about maybe £6 a week for the hard work he did. Because I walked across the road in Kilcoynes in 1947 when I left school. Yes. I left school when I was 13. And I worked in Kilcoynes delivering groceries around the town with a bicycle for 12 shillings a week. That's what I got, 12 shillings a week. And then I got a job in the college washing spuds for the students. I think I got 14 shillings a week in the college.
French Park is and will remain an agricultural community. To the local small farmer, the village sells supplies and extends credit when times are hard. The lands of Roscommon are not the most rewarding, and a year's unremitting work can produce all too often a pitifully meagre result. French Park has its fair share of small farmers who are also family men. Their plight can be severe.
John Hunt, would you be an average farmer in these parts?
I am, yes.
What do you farm?
Approximately about 20 hectares.
And this will be mostly in pasture, I suppose?
Yes, it's mostly in grass.
Have you lived here all your life?
I haven't, no.
Where were you?
I was in England for 7 years.
Did you make good wages over there?
I did, yes.
What brought you back?
I used to come home at Christmas time to see my people every year. And I just met my missus.
So you settled down?
So I just just got married and I thought I'd have a do with farming.
Well, do you make good living on this 20-acre farm?
I don't.
What's wrong with it?
I think I just make an existence on it. I just haven't a penny to spare for anything. I cannot have a night out for
You get a fair bit of help from the government.
It keeps going continually worse. It has gone worse the last couple of years, really. We like to have a day at the races. We generally have a day or two every year, and we couldn't afford it this year.
You get a good deal of help from the government, don't you?
I don't get any government help. Some people do. Well, I do really. We're in the pilot area. We get a little, but it's really no use.
What about the future? Have you any hope for the future here?
Well, I think if the small farmer is going to exist, that he would want at least 2 and 6 a gallon for milk.
He'd want more help.
And he would want a lot more help. There's no incentive to try and manage on what we're getting because we cannot have any capital for putting up buildings, such as I feel like putting up a cow buyer, and I haven't got the capital to do it.
Well, do you work hard enough to make the money?
I do. There's no man works any harder, I think. I get up at 7 o'clock every morning, I'm working till dark at night, and have a good idea what I'm working at. I'm improving year by year. I'm increasing my stock, and I do fair tillage, and I make a living. I sell potatoes and vegetables, and I do everything I can to try and make a decent living.
A decent living, a hard thing to come by in present-day French Park.
Some people today, Frank, don't know they're born when they want bed and breakfast to go into a hotel. That time you went into a shilling rounding house and...
Yes, it was a nice hotel.
Oh. Just dog room.
Well, you see, and we thought we had it bad, but you know, I've been talking to characters, you know, as you go to them all rotten houses, and you see, you couldn't even sleep on the floor, they said, but the whole hanger over the roof, like, and you'd laying across them like that, and go to sleep.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but you pay a shilling or 6 pence.
That's right. Just put a rope across from wall to wall.
Yes, that's
See,
it.
you take up too much space lying down. So what they did, Frank, they had ropes, and you laid this on the rope,
Yeah.
and fell asleep.
That's how they fall asleep, yes.
That's right, 6 pence a night.
Yes.
If you want to go on the rope,
Yes,
it
yeah.
was 1 and 6 if you want to go to bed.
Oh, that's so. Yeah.
They were all hanging on the ropes.
Yes.
Michael the War, do you remember Michael the War?
Yeah, I do.
Michael the War used to tell us about the routing houses around Edinburgh and all around there, and how hard it was to get a lie down. Change country now, Peg. Do you remember when we used to say, Peg, give us a speech about the government? You remember?
I do. And then all the pack of bastards.
You were dead right. You were dead right. They were a pack of bastards.
Bastards.
Yeah, they were, yeah.
Crazy when they made it from the 4th of January.
I know.
And then they appendix.
I know, you were good marksman. Of course, you had to work in them days because of compulsory tillage.
Oh, Christ, it was a whole.
It was, yeah, hard work. Hard work. You always had a good horse, didn't you?
Oh, we had great horses.
Your father was a great judge of horses.
He was.
Martin Trehan.
Oh, great. When he gone to the tree brother was the name.
Yeah, no, good man, yeah. Good man. But a different world in the pack to what it is today.
This club was built about 1945 as the local community meeting house. The land was given by Dan and Johnny Cassidy free to the community, and the stones and everything belonged to the club. was carted here by horse and cart, and the local lads built this club, which turned out a wonderful place to meet. We'd meet here in the winter's night with a big fire of sticks from the wood here, or turf the people brought. There was great dances in here, and the admission fee was 6p, the little coin with the greyhound on it. And the musicians had come and played just for a case of beer. Joe Saylor, Mick Lavin, Johnny Kilgarriff, Tommy McDermott, they all been here. They were wonderful musicians, and we had many a good night in here, and there was many a couple met and married us this place.
Father Casey, it's nearly 50 years since you left French Park. There must have been a lot of changes in that time.
Oh, of course there are. There's both good and bad. This beautiful new school built, and the church has been greatly improved, and the towns, the shops that survive, just modernised, and they look very well, and they brighten up the village. But then there are so many houses gone that were there when I were in it, and you miss them, the old schools and those old familiar things that we had as children, and you miss the old faces and people. And you miss also the spirit that used to exist in those days, and occasions of weddings and social gatherings. It was a very, very happy period for that. And all weddings were held in the houses. And there was a great gathering of clans, and great fun and great amusement, and nobody went home thirsty. Then there was the Ramblin' House, which was a custom out in the country areas, where the people gathered into one house during the winter nights. And the kitchen was brightened up, and the lamp lit, and the smoked and talked, and read the local paper, you see, or got one of the best readers. And occasionally an uncle brought me to one of those, and I was delegated to do the reading, sitting on the table under the lamp. And they were very, very pleasant. Well, those things are gone. And the market house, which was the centre of entertainment in the village, well, there was an annual ball which created great excitement, lasted a long time. You had concerts and some plays and step dancing and competitions, and we all learned step dancing. And as a matter of fact, you may be glad to hear that I got a prize for step dancing. I don't think I'd get many marks now. And then there's talk at the present time of erecting new schools, and it's improving, but many of the people are gone, and it's lonely from that point of view.
I can do a bit, not a lot now.
Do you play much of this music nowadays?
No, not now.
I suppose you dance to it as well.
Except toss and take down the tambourine, and it might cheer me up then to play a tune.
But in French Park here, you don't have much of this kind of music now.
No.
Why is that, do you think?
These halls get away with halls.
The dance halls take away to Boyle and Kerry.
Yes.
What about the rest of your children? You have quite a lot of children now.
I have 11 away, and I have 48 grandchildren. And a great-grandchild.
Where are they all?
In Leeds. They're all in Leeds.
And Austin's the only one with you?
Austin's the only one home.
But when did you learn to play the accordion?
Myself. I learned from it at home.
Well, were your family musical?
Yeah.
Well, when you were growing up, was there a lot of this kind of dancing?
Oh, yes.
Parties?
Oh, yes, a lot of parties and dances in the houses around the village. Yeah.
So it's all gone?
All gone. All gone, that's right.
They'd all land home in taxis in the evening, drunk, and a half a bottle of porter, which was 12 or 14 gallons of porter in a bottle. Said to me, Pat couldn't get Joe Saylor. Joe Saylor lived up in Clonagh.
That's right.
Me and Paddy Finney and 2 bikes up for Joe Saylor. But Joe's wife was a bit mental, and you couldn't say we want Joe for a dance.
Yeah.
You had to ask her, had any pups, until you got a hold of Joe. Sometimes they went down in the place.
Oh, I see.
And said, Joe, they want you down in Castlemore. I'll be down shortly. And away he goes. So with Paddy Finney had his strut in the middle.
Yeah, this is the end of the course, yeah.
He said, knock at the door. And Sailor's wife come to the door. She was like the white woman from Borneo. She said, what do you want now? He said, any pups. How many pups do you think we have?
Oh, my God! Poor Pat.
The parties went on, Frankie, until Father McVan come home from town and landed at our house, and he knocked on the door. I remember well. My father seen him coming up the field, so my father escaped and went into the cow house and up the hatch into the loft.
Oh, God.
And he knocked on the door and he said, is Philip Hunt live here? And I said, not Philip Hunt. He said, what do you call the man of this house? I said, John Hunt. Is he in? I said, well, he's not in. I said, but he's here. He said, well, he's in. I brought him up the grand. I brought him up the grand steps and I opened the door. And my father was sitting in the creamery cannon.
Oh, never.
Hiding. And I remember the words he said to him. He said, Johnny Hunt, he said, there's been a report in the town. They had a doing Costeros, opposite the
That's right, yes, aye.
And there was a row in with the town lads.
There was a dude, was there a row of what? There was a party in that house. Across from the church.
That's right.
Yeah.
And nobody went to mass that Sunday.
That's...
Oh, that was
into the party.
Yeah.
That was into the party. So he said to my father, he said, this had it cut out. So my father, I remember, went over to Frank Towie. Yeah. He was the chairman of the parties.
Commissioner.
And all, there was 18 empty half barrels out of Frank Towie's. And I got the job at the Aston Cat
to deliver them. I remember it well.
Yeah.
Sure, I was in the elements. We were out every night at the Dooms.
It was great.
So, and dancing in the club.
That went on for 3 solid weeks.
It did, yes.
And there wasn't a fork here or a salad truck.
You're talking about, and you know, they're on about young ones now today, and you know, and these were old people.
Remember Mike Owen, old Mike,
yeah.
Big moustache.
That's what I'm talking about.
That's
yeah.
I know is that him and Pat Rush in Tomonaghy used to plough together with the 2 horses.
Oh, used to, oh yeah.
Yeah, well, Pat Rush, his wife, she had a mental breakdown and she was away for a good 5 months. No.
Yeah.
Mike was in that Rush's ploughing, and his wife had come out of the asylum the day before.
Yeah.
She was better. And when he was coming home in the evening, Annie Woods was standing at the crossroads and she said, "You ploughing again today, Mike?" He said, "Oh, I was over in Pat Rush's ploughing today." And she said, "Oh, is his wife all right now?" "Oh God," he said, "she come out of the asylum yesterday." He said, "She's great now." He said, "They took the silly off her."
The silly was gone.
This wall, as I told you before, was built by my father, and it was finished in June 1951. At that time, the concrete cap was nice and fresh and smooth. So as a challenge one evening, I had a good bicycle, and the lads dared me to cycle down the top of the wall, which is about 600 yards long. So I got up on the wall on my new bicycle, and I cycled from the top to the bottom, and I had a sore backside when my father found out what I had done. That's the story of that war in 1951.
How wide is it, Kelly? Put your hands out.
It's about 15 inches, wide.
And it looks a lot higher when you stand.
And it goes down a terrific, you know, there's a terrific drop. I'd say there might be 100 feet drop from the top to the bottom. This club, as I told you, was used as the local community for people to meet at night time to discuss anything that was worth discussing. Well, when the bigger lads was in this club, he didn't want the likes of me, who was about 10 years old, and Paddy Feeney and Johnny Regan, who were three mouthy kids, and they chase us out and lock us out of the club. So what we used to do was, the roof was thatched in them days. We used to climb up on the roof and put a bag in the chimney, smoked them out of the club. They had to open the door. When they opened the door, we ran in. And that's the way the life went on. And then they'd say to us, well, you can't come in if you go up into the wood and get some sticks. They'd have us carrying sticks all night to keep the fire alight. We had great fun with it. And then they'd chase us home at 9 o'clock at night and say, you've got to go home and go to bed and get up for school in the morning, which we hated with a vengeance. Helena, Mike had a lovely black donkey here. The loveliest donkey you ever seen in your life. He was dead quiet. And Celia Regan had a washing line full of blankets for the big broody kids she had. And one evening, me and Paddy Feeney took a blanket of Celia's line and wrapped it around my Feeney's donkey. And cut 2 holes in it for the donkey.
Oh no, my God, Bob.
You meant to put it on the horse, but you couldn't catch it.
We couldn't catch the horse, so we put it in the donkey and we cut 2 holes and pulled the donkey's ear up. And Celia was out the following day looking for the blanket.
Oh God, how good blanket.
And she seen the donkey walking around the field. And she said to her father-in-law, I see where the bloody blanket is now. It's on Mike Feeney's donkey. And when she went over to get the blanket to retrieve it, there was 2 big holes in it.
Oh God, above. And what age were you at that time, Pat? About
12 or 13.
No, it's above.
When we were going to school, the townies used to call us country buffs, and we used to say hay and oats for the town goats, eggs and rashers for the country dashers.